In this video, I'll be showing you how to use fail2ban to limit login attempts on a Linux server. In case you're unfamiliar, what fail2ban does is it checks logs for applications on your server, and if it sees a certain number of failed login attempts from a specific IP address in a given time frame, it will block that IP address in the server's firewall temporarily. What this does is it slows brute force attacks way down, as well as preventing brute force attacks from wasting resources on your server. Now, I'm going to demonstrate a fail2ban configuration with the WordPress site, as well as a postfix SMTP server and a Dovecot IMAP server, which I've set up in my last few videos. Alright, so now the first thing you're going to do is log into your server, and then first of all we're going to need to install the fail2ban package with sudo apt install fail2ban and its dependency IP tables, which fail2ban uses to block IP addresses. Now, on most Linux systems, IP tables is already installed. However, if you're doing this on a minimal Linux install, like I am, then it might not be installed. And by the way, this command is specific to Debian/Ubuntu, so if you're using another distro, then it will be different. But anyway, we're going to hit yes to install these packages. Okay, and then the next thing we're going to do to configure fail2ban, before we start configuring it rather, is we got to copy the default fail2ban configuration files, fail2ban.conf and jail.conf, to fail2ban.local and jail.local respectively. To do that, do sudo cp /etc/fail2ban /fail2ban.conf space /etc/fail2ban /fail2ban.local, and then sudo cp /etc/fail2ban /jail.conf, and then /etc/fail2ban /jail.local. Okay, and the reason why we just did this is because if we were to edit our fail2ban and jail.conf files directly, then our changes will be overwritten by updates with fail2ban. So when we do this, then anything we put in the .local file, won't be touched by updates, and will also override what's in the .conf files. Okay, so now we're going to actually tweak a few configurations. So everything we're going to be doing is in the jail.local file. Well, I'm not even going to touch fail2ban.local, but I think it's good to just have it anyway. So do sudo nano /etc/fail2ban /jail.local, and then you should see your fail2ban jail.local configuration file. If you get a blank file, then either you've typed your file name in wrong, or you haven't copied the jail.conf to the jail.local, so make sure you do that. But anyway, we're going to scroll down, and then first thing I like to change is uncomment this bantime.increment equals true line. And what this does is it'll basically double our ban time each time. So start with banning an IP for 10 minutes, and then next time ban for 20, then time after that ban for 40 minutes, and so on and so forth. I also like to configure the bantime.maxtime, so make sure to uncomment that. And I like to set that to 48 hours so that our ban time won't exceed 48 hours, because keep in mind that we're doing IP banning, and IP addresses can change. Most residential users are on dynamic IPs, so this will just reduce the risk of ending up blocking out legitimate traffic from an IP address that was once assigned to a bad actor. And the reason why you want to do ban time incrementing is because you don't want to just do, like, for example, 10 minutes each time, because there are scripts out in the internet that will just wait 10 minutes and then try again. And now, if you scroll down to ignore IP, you can uncomment this and then add your own IP address separated by spaces. However, I only recommend doing this if your ISP gives you a static IP, which if you're not sure if it does, then it probably doesn't. And now we get to like the most important values: ban time, find time, and max retry. So ban time is the amount of time that an IP address is banned for. So by default, it's 10 minutes, which is great, especially with our ban time incrementing. And find time is the time frame for which fail2ban searches for failed login attempts for an IP address. For me personally, I think it's fine at 10 minutes, but you can of course change this if you like. And then max retry is the number of failed login attempts before an IP address gets banned. By default, it's set to 5. However, I personally like to set it to 10. That's just my personal preference. And then the final thing to do in here is come down here and then change dest email to an actual email address, like the account on your system that you use for sending and receiving email. Note that you will need to have a mail server installed on your server in order for this to work, which I've done in a previous video. And then the last thing we're going to do in this file is enable the fail2ban jails that we want for our various applications. By default, the SSHD jail for our SSH server is enabled. And by the way, jails are basically a set of filters that search log files for particular applications and also store IP addresses that have failed login attempts and IP addresses that have been banned. To do that, we're going to scroll down to this jails section, and these are all the jails that come with fail2ban. You can actually create your own if you know what you're doing. I'm not going to go over that in this video since that's kind of beyond the scope of this video. Now, I'm not going to go over all the jails that come with fail2ban, just the ones that are relevant to the configuration that I've done on this server in my last few videos, where I've installed a WordPress site on Apache and a postfix/dovecot basic mail server. So the first jail that I'm going to enable is Apache-auth for our WordPress site. To enable a jail, just within that jail, just type enabled equals true, like so, and then repeat that for all the jails you want enabled. And by the way, just a pro tip, if you're in a big long configuration file and you want to get to a particular line quickly, in Nano, just type Control-W and then type in what you want to search for example, postfix, and then it'll take you to a line with your search terms. So I'm going to enable the postfix jail, enabled equals true, and then I'm going to come to postfix sassle, and then enabled equals true, and now I'm going to come back up to dovecot for our IMAP server, and then type enabled equals true. Those are the jails that I'm going to enable, so then just hit Control X, then Y, then enter to save this file, and then do sudo systemctl restart fail2ban for our changes to take effect. And now we've got to start our jails using the sudo fail2ban -client start command, then the jails you want to start. So Apache-auth postfix -sazzle dovecot. And then we can run the sudo fail2ban -client status command again and see that all our jails are now enabled and running. And by the way, if you try to start a jail and it's saying that it's not found, first of all, make sure you've spelled it correctly. And second, go back into your jail.local configuration file and make sure that you've enabled that jail and then restarted fail2ban afterward. And by the way, There is a lot more you can do with fail2ban. I've just scratched the surface. So I encourage you to run the fail2ban-client --help command to see all the options that the fail2ban-client command has to offer. And also check out the jail.local as well as fail2ban.local configuration files to see all the options that they have to offer. Now, if you're using WordPress, like what I've done in my website build video, then there's one more gotcha you gotta be aware of before you can expect fail2ban to work here on our WordPress login page. WordPress doesn't log authentication failures by default, meaning that fail2ban can't detect them, and therefore won't ban IP addresses that generate our set number of login attempts. So we need to write a PHP script to log authentication failures in our Apache error log file, and then put it in a custom plugin. To do that, do sudo nano/wp-content/wp-auth-fail.php, and then this will open up a brand new file. Just copy and paste in this PHP snippet that I'll have in the description, and then remove the extra spacing at the beginning of each line, like so, and then it should look something like that. It's just a very simple PHP snippet. Then hit Ctrl+X, then Y, then Enter to save and close the file. Now go to your site's WP admin panel, then go to Plugins, and then you should see this new plugin, Log Auth Failures, and then all you have to do is activate it. And now if we try a bad login attempt, like that, and then come back into our terminal and then look at our Apache error log with nano/var/log/apache2/error.log. Note that I've left out sudo on purpose because we don't want to make any edits to our configuration file. But anyway, if we come down to the bottom of this file, note that you may need to scroll quite a bit depending on how big your Apache error log file is. But then you should see PHP notice. This is the offending IP address and source port number, or the username that was attempted, along with authentication failure for your website /wp-admin, password mismatch. If you see that, then you know it's working. So now let's close out of this configuration file by doing Ctrl+X. And that's it for this video. Be sure to give it a like if you liked it, dislike if you disliked it, comment, share, subscribe, all that good stuff, and see you next time.